My dear brothers and sisters, Michelangelo, one of those great artists that the world ever seen, one day enters into his studio and he examines all the canvases of his students, his pupils. Looking at all the canvases, he complimented many of them. He advised few of them of their day's job. Finally, he came to his star disciple, one of his favorite disciples. The man was working on his small canvas, a very small canvas he was working. And Michelangelo, when he seen that, he immediately took the brush across the picture of the canvas. He writes in Latin, "Amphiulus," which means larger. He wants larger, not just small canvases. And Jesus must have often been tempted to write these words, Amphiulus or larger, over our lives so many times. And in our lives, He wants each one of us to be large in our thinking, to be large in our way of living. And therefore, He must have felt or tempted to write Amphiulus on our life. And so many of us have been living life, maybe good life. As far as possible, we have gone this far. But we have not gone enough far. That is what He wants from each one of us. Our spiritual life, our spiritual canvases for Him looks very small. Because you and I are in a way showing and exhibiting our life. But the canvases that we are living in the spiritual canvases, is so small. We are capable in a way. He wants to tell you that you can do much more in your spiritual life. You can do much more. Don't think that I cannot do this. No. You can do much more in your spiritual life. If you are capable in doing so many things in the world in which you live, let it be your job, responsibilities, work, looking after your family, you can also make it big in your spiritual life as well. The teacher would always tell us, larger canvases, larger brushes, so that you may be sitting on the benches where you can really portray your spiritual life in a large way. In a way, our life is ours, but He expects you to make it big. That is the reason why we see in today's gospel reading, He tells us 8 times, abide in me, abide in me. I'm sure all through this day, you must have these words ringing in you, abide in me, abide in me. Why? Because He wants you to remain in Him. A saint said, aim for the stars, at least you may reach the mountain. Because if you aim for the mountain, sad that you will be remaining in the mud still. In other words, if you remain in Him, I'm sure you will reach the mountains. You will reach very high. And therefore, He always says, launch into the deep, so that you may remain with me. It's not in the periphery that He wants you to remain. He wants you to go into the deep. That is the reason why very often we as parish priests expect so much from you. That how much effective our parish can be if you Catholics can share the burdens of each other. You can become really wonderful. One of those great writers, Mark Twain, says that a complimentary word from you is like an oxygen for my soul. We have to compliment each other. The more you compliment with each other, it looks like a booster for me. It looks like a booster for you. Not only just saying, have a nice day, telling something really beautiful. And that is the reason why, if you remember, during our Advent season, we told you, you must write some compliments about your wife, about your husband, put it in a box, and on the Christmas day, take it out and read. Why? Because it is an oxygen for the soul. We have so many boosters for our physical diseases, but for our spiritual life, for our very life, I need some compliments. You may say, well, Father, I don't know how to express, but a simple compliment would mean a lot. And that is only when you and I can share our burdens. When I share my burden with you, when you share my burden, then I can tell you something beautiful, and then that becomes a compliment, and that becomes an oxygen for your life. And that is what Jesus wants to tell each and every one of us. It happened to a young girl who always desired to do something nice in life. She finished her studies, and after finishing her studies, she said, well, everybody goes for great international, multinational companies. Why can't I do something different? She takes up social activity works and thereby becomes a social worker. And as a social worker, she also ends up in a call center. And what she does every day for 4 days in a week as working as a social worker, she would be there 4 days in the office calling up her 50 clients. Her 50 clients she calls up and said every time when she calls up her 50 client, she will ask, did you take your medicine? Did you eat well? Did you keep your diet? Did you go to the doctor? Did the cabman come in time? This is all that arrangements that she does for each and every one from her desk. Once in a week she goes out to meet her 50 clients who are on the bed. And once in a week she could only meet one patient. And she was doing her work, but not really satisfied. But one of her client, elderly lady who was on her bed, Mrs. Mowley, she was a very nasty lady. She would directly tell on this face of this young girl who wants to be an aspirant social worker, who tells, well, you see, who told you to come? I didn't call you. For what have you come? To spend some time with me? So nasty that she was unable to bear with this lady. But she continued to do her work. 4 days in a week, calling up her clients and asking their welfare, and once a week go and visit all these patients, and she would cover all the 50 patients in a month. So once a month each of their clients would receive her presents, and she was still not content. She went to her parish priest and said, you see, Father, I'm doing my work and I'm doing this work, and you see, I'm not able to understand all this. I'm really caught up with this work. I'm doing it very sincerely. The parish priest asked, well, do you go for Mass every Sunday? Did you go for your confession? Do you do your night prayers? And then immediately she thinks within herself, what does that got to do with my work? This priest normally, typical priest advice. And then she says, what that matters? I'm doing my work, I'm going and visiting all these people, but you know, this elderly woman, Molly, puts me off. What should I do? The parish priest said, well, you better spend some time before the Blessed Sacrament every day. You better spend some time with the Lord. She said, okay. And one day, she found that there is a very close by church, which she did not realize that the church is very close by. She goes there, spends 1 hour every day, and then goes back to her work. Everything started changing slowly. Something happened because the priest said, you are doing something, but you are not doing enough. And that is what struck her. That little enough is to abide in Him. My dear friends, you and I may be doing so much of work for our family, morning to evening. We must be doing so much of work for our people. And we must be caught up with so much of work. But if you are not remaining with God, in other words, if God is not overflowing in your life, how can you give God, how can you give love, how can you share your burdens with others? Therefore, unless I have God overflowing in my life, I cannot give love to others. You and I also are in the same boat, that we are doing, yes, but not really enough. That little enough can happen if you and I can remain, abide. Therefore, we find Jesus Christ saying 8 times in today's gospel reading, abide in me, if you abide in me. And finally, he says, if you remain in me, ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you. Therefore, when we do so much of work, so much of service, so much of helping, so much of out of the way we do so much for our people, if you are not remaining in Him, all the works that you do becomes zero. Therefore, he says, if you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask for whatever you want and I will give it to you. For he knows that everyone who can remain in him will become and will be a true disciple. Therefore, finally, I would say, today, let these words ring in your mind and in your life. Abide in me. You can do more than what you are doing now. Amen. Let us all stand for the creed. And let us all together